Number 10. Remote surveillance. In April 2022, Texas parents watched a terrifying home invasion as it happened through a surveillance camera. Two men raided their home and robbed their daughter at gunpoint. These days, it's pretty common to have a smart camera installed in your house, to keep an eye on things while you're away. These homeowners were just leaving their daughter with friends while they enjoyed an evening out. They weren't expecting anything bad to happen, but by sheer luck, they checked their phones and saw what the kids were up to at home. What they witnessed, though, will probably live in their memory for a long time. Two armed men had broken into their house in Pasadena, California. On top of this, the men were keeping the kids hostage as they scoured through the place to find valuables worth taking. In fact, at one point, one of the robbers lifted one of the teens by her hair and ordered her to move to another part of the house. It was, without exaggeration, true horror. As soon as the parents saw this happening on their surveillance app, they started threatening the robbers, saying they caught him on camera and they'd call the police and neighbors. They were also, of course, shouting and telling them to leave. And surprisingly enough, they did run away after hearing this. That being said, they're still at large, and police haven't been able to catch them. So if you're in Pasadena, keep your eyes peeled. Number 9. Selling copper. It's not very often that you come home after walking your dog to find someone in your sister's room who moved out 6 years ago, but that's exactly what happened to one Redditor who was gearing up for a late-night walk around the house. As soon as he started walking downstairs, though, he noticed his sister's door was open and her light was on. Now, instead of freaking out, he slowly walked into the room, turned the light off, and closed the door. Well, at least that's what he wanted it to seem like, but in reality, he was actually scanning the room for intruders, and boom, he actually saw a man trying to hide behind the closet door. That being said, since the closet was broken and it stacked boxes in front of it, the intruder didn't stand a chance. The Redditor, on the other hand, acted like he didn't see him and just grabbed his shotgun from the other room. He then barged back into the room ready for a fight, pointed the gun at the intruder, and told him not to move if he didn't want to get shot. He didn't really listen, though, and just made a run for it as fast as he could. While he was running away, the Redditor caught a glimpse of his face, and apparently the man had knocked on the door a few days before, claiming to know the neighbors. Oh, and also he was apparently looking for spare copper to sell for extra cash, so the guy just gave him some old car batteries. Having said that, we're not really sure what he was here for this time around, but instead of getting more copper, he almost got some lead instead. Number 8. Bloodbath. In May 2020, the police responded to a 911 call after shots were fired inside a Staten Island home, but they got to the scene and found a bloodbath. 45-year-old Afalia Rodriguez was just having a quiet afternoon with his 7-month pregnant girlfriend and a friend when Philip Moreno walked into his home. Now, we don't know whether the door was unlocked or whether he let Moreno in, since there weren't any signs of forced entry. Apparently, the two had a feud dating back years, which could have initiated the encounter. Moreno only had murder on his mind, though, as he opened fire on all 3 people in the house. And while Afalia and his girlfriend died on the spot, their friend Erica somehow managed to pull through her gunshot wounds after getting medical treatment. So she was the only survivor besides the couple's 2-year-old child, who was upstairs at the time. Oddly enough, Moreno was carrying zip ties with him, which points towards this being a heist more than anything. But the 3 dead people in the house definitely suggest otherwise. Thankfully, police managed to catch him before he could escape, and they found a gun, knife, and a bunch of cocaine on him, which he supposedly got from the house. Having said that, this wasn't the killer's first rodeo, since he had several prior convictions and had even spent 15 years in prison. Afalia, on the other hand, had been arrested multiple times on drug-related charges, but was trying to turn his life around with the birth of his new child. If there is any solace, though, it's the fact that Moreno was charged with second-degree murder, meaning he'll probably spend the rest of his life behind bars. Number 7. Life-saving brownies. Okay, we've heard about leaving cookies out for Santa, but what about walking in on a burglar eating brownies? This actually did happen to one family. The mother, who'd been recently making brownies, made the best batch of her life, but since it was getting late, she and her kids left them on the kitchen stove and went to sleep. Now, the dad was out at a meeting and was due home soon, so they just left the door unlocked for him. When he pulled it into the driveway, though, he noticed the garage door was open and his bike was outside. As he walked into the home, he saw a man standing in his kitchen. At first, he assumed one of his friends had come over to borrow his bike, but the reality soon dawned on him as he got closer that this man wasn't a friend at all. In fact, it was an intruder. That being said, after the most awkward staring contest, the burglar made a run for it. The dad, on the other hand, went upstairs to check on his family. Here's where it gets interesting. As they were checking whether the man had stolen anything, they realized he'd skipped all of their valuables, including wallets that were lying on the counter, and instead just chomped down on the leftover brownies before making his getaway. Now, whether he was there to steal stuff or eat something, we'll never know. What we do know, though, is that that batch of brownies saved the day. If you were a burglar, what food would make you forget to steal stuff and just snack? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Reality star. In October 2021, 3 armed men broke into Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Dorit Kemsley's home and robbed her at gunpoint. As a reality star, Kemsley's pretty open about her life and posts a ton of updates for her fans. So thinking that she was still at her nephew's wedding in London, robbers thought this was their time to break into her home and steal some stuff. Little did they know, though, that she'd returned from her trip the night before and was asleep in her room. Of course, it's not like this was going to stop them, as they broke in through the door at night and walked into the star's bedroom while she slept. As soon as Kemsley woke up, they held her at gunpoint, threatening to murder her and her children who were with her in the house. Now, with one intruder holding her, the others ransacked the place for a half an hour, stealing all sorts of expensive jewelry and handbags. Kemsley, on the other hand, only cared about her and her children's lives, as she begged them to leave her alone. That being said, the thieves didn't enter any of the other bedrooms and escaped after stealing over $100,000 worth of stuff. Obviously, as soon as they left, the reality star called her husband PK, who was in London at the time, and the police. Her co-stars arrived on the scene to offer their support as well, but to this day, the suspects remain at large. Number 5. Violent bout. In May 2022, 2 masked men forced their way into a Diamond Bar home and started a brutal fistfight with the homeowner. At 2 a.m. on a quiet Thursday morning, police received reports of a home invasion near the Sunset Crossing Road area, and when they reached the location, they were met by a man covered in blood who had just been robbed. The robbers were apparently desperate for cash and hadn't actually planned anything in advance. As a matter of fact, they had just had a handgun and a taser on them, but despite being armed, the homeowner didn't back down and tried to fight them. So they traded blows, and sadly though, the guy defending his home didn't really stand a chance, since, well, it was a 2-versus-1 match, and he got his face bruised and had blood dripping all down it. No amount of bravery or fighting could stop the robbers from fleeing with $3,000 in cash and other belongings. While the police have caught a suspect that could be linked to the crime, no charges have been placed as of this video's release. Number 4. Serial invaders. In March 2022, 4 armed men broke into a Tarzana rental home, beat up the tenants, and escaped with a bunch of jewelry. It went down on a Sunday morning as the suspects broke into the rental on Gale Avenue through the back door while everyone was sleeping. They weren't there to just quietly steal stuff, though. They woke everyone up and demanded their high-value items. But when one of the victims resisted, the armed men beat them up, leaving them severely bruised, and once they had gathered enough of everyone's possessions, they made a run for it. Now here's where it gets interesting. Apparently, after the police managed to track down 3 of the thieves and arrest them, they realized these people were seasoned home invaders. In fact, they literally robbed another rental home in Atwater Village just a month before this incident and had stolen jewelry and other valuables. Their methods are also pretty interesting, since rather than planning out their robberies, they prefer to follow their victims home instead. They also weren't afraid to do it out in the open either, since they'd also been involved in the daylight robbery and shooting of a man on Burbank Boulevard. Oh, and through the course of the investigation, police seized 6 handguns and an assault rifle. So yeah, these guys meant serious business. Number 3. Making money is my thang. In March 2021, 2 burglars broke into a Charlotte home and robbed a couple at gunpoint. But as they made their escape, a shirt fell out of their car, a shirt that just so happened to have one of the men's faces on it. Nachita Davis and Delaney Douglas were enjoying a quiet afternoon at their home on Dinglewood Avenue when the 2 suspects barged in through the front door and apprehended them. And since they were armed, the couple had no choice but to comply. So they forced Douglas from one room to another, looking for jewelry and other valuables. Now, after they'd scraped together wallets, cash, and more, it was time for them to simply hop back in their car and hit the pedal to the metal. Simple enough, right? Well, apparently not for suspect Jonathan Huntley, who, while he was escaping with his partner, dropped a t-shirt with his mugshot from a previous arrest on it. Oh, and funnily enough, the shirt had a caption on it saying, "Making money is my thang." So of course police got their hands on this evidence, but before they could even start the investigation and search for Huntley, he turned himself in out of sheer embarrassment and was charged with the robbery. Number 2, home run. In June 2019, a California man was beaten with a baseball bat in his own home by a violent intruder. Garrett Kincaid was asleep at his Lakewood house when he woke up to a strange sound coming from another room. When he got up to investigate, he realized there was another man in his house. Now, instead of hiding or calling the police, he started screaming at the top of his lungs, hoping someone in the neighborhood would hear and come help him. What this actually did, though, was startle the intruder, who turned around and started slamming on the homeowner with a baseball bat. In fact, after the attack, Garrett was left with a cut on his eyebrow and several welts on his back. That being said, his loud reaction did work as the suspect made a run for it without stealing anything. Plus, the neighbors also heard his cries for help and called the police. What's more, despite getting bruised by a literal bat, Garrett refused to be taken to the hospital. So, all's well that ends well, right? Number 1. Utility worker. In February 2019, 3 men in ski masks forced their way into an LA home and ransacked it. It was a pretty busy Monday morning when the intruders showed up at the West Hills house, with one of them wearing an LA Department of Water and Power vest. And as they broke their way into the front door, no one batted an eye because he looked so official. Once they were in, though, they didn't hold back. As a matter of fact, they tied up the homeowner, pistol whipped him, and scrounged all around the house for valuables. And guess what? They actually got 3 full boxes worth of prized possessions. That being said, when it was time to leave, once again there was no hurry. They slowly walked up to their Ford F-150 pickup truck, placed all the boxes inside, and drove away, making it seem like they were there on behalf of the utility department. Now, as soon as they left, the homeowner ran outside with blood dripping down his face and asked his neighbor to call the police. And even though the investigations pointed toward a targeted attack, no suspects have been caught to this day. Thanks for watching. What would you do if someone walked into your home with a baseball bat? Would you fight or run away? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.